Okay, so we're coming back to Hilchos Taaruvot, Siman Kuf Yud. We're holding a Siftes. After Siftes, we're introduced by the Shach to 36 ways of how to determine if a Sfek Sveka is a real Sfek Sveka or not. So maybe we'll get into that a little bit later after the Yom Tovim. Then we have one Sif left, Sif Yud, and then we're on to the last Sif, Siman in Taaruvot, Kuf Yud Aleph. Okay, so before we go on, we need to do a little bit of Chazara. In Siman Kuf Yud, which we're learning, there's several kinds of Taaruvos, and some of them are very unique. 3 of them involve a situation where at the initial stage something may be asur for some reason, but something occurs, something happens at a later stage that somehow transforms the situation, brings about a change where it becomes mutter. And that is why I say they have something in common, which is what we need to speak about. What exactly do they have in common? What exactly is going on? And it's important for us to review it because this will help us understand a little bit the various machlokes and shitas concerning Sfek Sveka and other points that come up towards the end of Siman Kuf Yud. One of them involves Seif Daled, where we spoke about the famous concept of kavua, where you have the majority of stores selling kosher meat and one of them selling treifa meat, and he took from one, he bought meat from one, he's not sure from where he bought the meat, and we said the kol kavua kemechzal mechzadami, that suffix in itself, even though the majority of stores present a majority, roiv is very, very strong, nonetheless, we said that it's as though you have mechzal, in other words 50%, which means it's asur. However, at some point, after the issur has been determined, this piece of meat is asur, the Chaber mentions that v'nis'arva be'acheros ve'eno nikeres, it got mixed up amongst others, and we can no longer identify it. It's betela beroiv mishum sfek sveka. So even though initially it's asur, and it's asur for a completely different type of din, even though we have roiv, still, it can still be batal beroiv in a taaruvos, a different kind of taaruvos, the more textbook example of taaruvos, being mixed up with other meat, as opposed to the taaruvos or the roiv that we have amongst stores, very distinct type of roiv. So here you have something that was asur initially because of the din of kavua, which is a chidush. Then it becomes mutter when it is mixed up amongst other pieces of meat. And the reason why it's mutter is because of Sfek Sveka. In other words, I would think it remains asur because the initial issur is very strict. It's kavua kemechzal mechzadamin. No, there is a possibility where something begins as an issur and something else happens to it, and it loses the chashivas somehow. Now, I'm cheating over here by saying losing its chashivas because the Chaber says the real reason is because you have a Sfek Sveka. Okay? But what does Sfek Sveka really do? That's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. What is Sfek Sveka? What is the strength behind the Sfek Sveka? Why, if you have 2 Svekas, it becomes mutter, it becomes more lenient than if you just have one suffix. We know suffix deraisa lechumra, we know suffix derabbanan lekula. There are many such concepts that we're familiar with. Nonetheless, we know that a suffix by itself is not always enough, because there are certain things that are dvorim chashuvim that are not batal, even though we have a suffix. But because they're dvorim chashuvim, midrabanan at least, they're not batal. Okay, so here you have a situation where we're told that once you have Sfek Sveka here, you're okay. Now that's the Mechaber. The Mechaber indicates here that even though we started off with an Isser, we arrive in the end into a Sfek Sveka. Sfek Sveka is strong. And the Sfek Sveka says that it's mutter. What's the Sfek Sveka? What's the suffix if this is the Isser or not that got mixed in or not? Right? And even if you say that the Isser got mixed in, if an Isser got mixed in, who's to say that what I have now is asur? Or the piece that I'm taking.
So that got mixed. Maybe what I have now in my hand is not that mixed.
Exactly. Right, exactly. So you have, so we did discuss in the past that there is always an additional problem of eating the whole thing at once. Eating it by one person. Okay, these are additional chumras, that even if you say something is mutter, you may want to be careful not to eat the whole thing at once, because otherwise you for sure, you don't really have a sfek anymore, then you only have one suffix. See what I mean? So that's a separate chumrah. But me'ikar din, the mechaber, is the one that says that you have a real sfek, a real sfek, where something becomes mutter because somehow it's no longer the original iser. It's not the original, we don't have the original problem of a suffix deraisa here. Somehow it lost that strength. The Ramah, however, on this halacha, says yesh oisrin. He brings a shita that in this particular example would say it's aser, bechi hay gavna, mishum de kol makom de isu bim koimo have kemechza al mechza. Right? In that example of kavua, you have isu bim koimo. The stores are there, so it's mechza al mechza. And v'hoil v'safik arishin asu min Torah, it's kavua. Once the first suffix is asu min Torah, you cannot say sfek on it because you have an iser. You don't have any more a sfek. You only have one suffix. If you say the first one is aser min Torah, ein kein od sfek lehati rak taaruvot. So mikro sfek. All you have is a mixture. The ochinog. So the Ramah wants to say that this is the way we conduct ourselves. That we would not allow the taaruvos that follow the kavua to make this a sfek. Why? It's important to remember this point because it comes back. It will come up later again. Because the first suffix is not a suffix; it's aser. We say mina Torah kavua is aser. Once you have an iser mina Torah, there is no suffix. I mean, there's no sfek there. All there is one suffix. So that's the Ramah in Seif Dalet.
Which suffix is that now?
There's only one suffix. Is it that piece or not?
Oh, because of the taaruvos.
Because of the taaruvos. You said that you don't have a sfek. All you have is a taaruvos. I mean, it's not a sfek. It's a suffix deraisa.
And why would the taaruvos not be veshviyafish or veshbalach?
No, that doesn't make a difference. It still retains the original iser of kavua. Yeah, in other words, you don't have you did not diminish the iser by introducing a sfek because he says you never got to that point.
And kavua,
right? It's mechza al mechza.
I mean, the one itself.
Right. Right. Exactly.
In the case of the stores.
Right.
It's mechza.
Yeah, that's why he starts off saying the kol makom the isu bim koimo have a kemechza al mechza.
Right. So
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
But that's with respect to the mechza.
Right. Exactly.
But now that it's in my pot, let's say I have meat against one piece of meat.
Yeah.
Then that one piece, if it would be mispata. If it's
right.
It can't be mispata.
So, exactly. So that was the chiddush that the mechaber said. Yeah, we have a traditional roiv over here.
Right.
Yeah, but
then I still don't understand the loss.
Right. We have a traditional roiv here, and the way it helps, even though you started off with a davar chashuv.
We're talking about davar chashuv.
Right. I mean, after all, no, it's not your davar chashuv of davar shishno matirin, roilus kabed. Not one of those davar chashuv. It's a chashuv because it's a kavua. The iser itself is a iser of kavua, which is mechza al mechza.
Is it a worse iser than if it was for sure a trade meat?
Yes, because of what it represents. It's a real tray piece of meat, supposedly. I mean, that's our suffix.
I'm saying,
right.
Let's say if it was a real tray piece of meat, a kavua is worse than that?
I don't understand.
If a perfectly treifa piece falls into a taaruvos, it can be misbattle in the taaruvos.
It can be misbattle, right?
Now, if it's a kavua, it's worse once it's in the taaruvos than if it was a for sure treifa.
Yeah, so that's what the Ramah is saying.
How
right.
Can that be?
The Ramah is saying that we don't have the sfek here.
I don't have a sfek. I have a for sure taaruvos. I don't have a sfek in the
exactly, right. So he says that because of the type, the nature of the iser, that it's kemechza al mechza dame, roiv doesn't help. In the taaruvos, roiv does not help over here.
So is he saying? I mean, I still understand. I'm asking just to find out.
Sure.
Is he saying that once it has become a mechza of mechza, it retains this category, even if it falls into another taaruvos?
Yeah.
It now converts this taaruvos in the pot into a situation of mechza al mechza.
Right. That's what he's saying. Yeah, that's what he's saying here.
Really, that's an incredible.
No. That's how he starts explaining. V'yesh oisrim b'chiyai gavno. Why? Why should they answer? I mean, it's a taaruvos, right? So why? It's an iser that fell in. Mishum de kol makom de iser bim koimoy Have a kemechzel mechze, and that remains so. No, that remains so. V'hoil v'sofik harishon osur min ha-Torah, v'ein kain od sfeika lehatir.
But
Rak taruvois, lo mikas sfeik sfeika. Because once you have sfeik sfeika, as we will see later on, that diminishes the strength of the original suffix.
for sure.
Right.
That increases the strength of the
Right,
suffix, diminishes the issur.
Right.
So that's for sure.
So all you have right now here is one suffix, and that's a suffix d'oraisa. It's roiv. It's not roiv, because it's.
That's what I don't understand why you
Right.
come to see it's not right.
Right.
Because the way he says it, it sounds as though he's saying the kavua on the situation that was in the store.
Yeah. Otherwise, think about it. Why would the mechaber have to even tell us svek over here? Right? Why would he have to even tell us svek? Obviously, it's because we're still stuck with the chumrah of kavua.
Okay, so this is for me a completely new concept.
Yeah.
That the kavua continue rule or to define the case even after it falls into a pot now.
Yeah.
It still continues to be a case of kavua in this.
Right. Now, there is a question, of course. There's a question on the mechaber himself. The Shach asks, very good question. He says, mitzorachiyah, that even if this was a plain taruvas, mechaber later on in Sif Ches says that it's not permissible unless you have 3 taruvas.
Right, we had that. We missed that.
Yeah. Why do we need 3 taruvas later on? Because we're dealing with davar she'eno batel machmas chashivusai.
Right, but here's not the case.
It is a form of davar chashuv. I mean, it is a din of kavua. In other words, what's the Shach's question? How come the Shach's question here on the mechaber is matter here sfek sfeika. Later on, which we will review, he requires 3 taruvos when you're dealing with a davar chashuv. Remember, davar chashuv is not batel.
Sure.
How can that be batel? In 3 taruvos it can be batel. So the Shach says, wait a minute. What's the mechaber trying to tell us? He himself later on requires 3 taruvos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Rashba holds that you need 2 taruvos. So what's the pshat? So you have to say the sfira mechaber, the kiven the kavua is a chidush, the whole din of kavua is a chidush. It's worse off than taruvos, than the regular typical taruvos. Once, therefore, it gets mixed up, you go after roib, and it's mutter. Second teres of the shach, that belav some allow for 2 taruvos, they don't require 3. Many places hold you don't need 3, you need 2 taruvos, right? So by kavua, which is a chidush, it's okay if it's nis'arv once. In other words, it would diminish the strength of the kavua by the time it's in the taruvos. That's how the Shach explains
So
the
is this argument going in the opposite direction? The first one was because it's a chid, it's even stronger. And now the last one that you brought from the Shach is saying because it's a chid, it's taruvos.
No, the second teres has to do with the fact that many poskim hold that you only need 2 taruvos anyway later. Okay, since you only see, even though he himself, the question is on mechaber. Mechaber says you need 3. You know what? There's enough to say that you need 2.
So here, according to the analogy.
Based on that, he would allow this over here. Why is he allowing it otherwise? Yeah. So we see from all of this that apparently the din of kavua does have some koach that continues on. Somehow the only way that stops it is the sfek sfeika, because of the taruvas. And even though the mechaber himself later on requires 3, the Shach said obviously you can answer it in 1 or 2 ways. Yeah. All right. So anyway, so that was the first din, the din of kavua losing its strength in a taruvas. Midin sfek sfek, as the mechaber points out, but the Ramah does not subscribe to this. Why? Because he holds that, wait a minute, how do you have a sfek sfeka? Once you say something is asr, you're only left with 1 suffix. You're only left with 1 suffix, you still have the same problem as you had before. In other words, you didn't gain anything. You don't have the sfek sfeka here to diminish the strength of kavua. Right? That was the first example of an isser that at some point is transformed or loses its koach through taruvas. The second din has to do with dvarim chashuvim that are not batel, and that one I think is one of the most unique ones. What happens to that is that one of them falls into the ocean or gets eaten up. right? Nechal ve'echad mehem b'shoigeg, or nofan be'atzmo layam. What did we say there? We made an assumption that the Isser one is the one that fell into the ocean, which is very interesting, because think about it. We've been trained so far in Hilchos Taaruvos that if something is porish, it's porish from the majority. If anything fell into the ocean, the most likely one was the mutter one. Think about it, right? The majority is mutter, called the porish meruba porish, yeah, and most likely the isser is still in the heter. It's still there. Who's to say that it's dafka the isser? I mean, there's no ruach hakodesh here, right? We're for sure, the Eberster, through Hashgacha, of course, made it happen that the one that was eaten, consumed by the whatever, was dafka the one that's also. That's very nice to say that. We'd love to believe that.
It's a Hashgacha practice.
We'd like to think so, that this is that's what this is. But Lemaaseh, when we analyze the heter, and it was why the Chachamim were matir, we see it's not necessarily tied to Hashgacha, but I would like to say so. I would like to say that when you have a big problem, Baruch Hashem, one of them fell into the sea, that we would like to say, was Hashem made it happen, that it's the one that's also.
So if you can see, and if I have a pot in front of me, this
right.
I'll eat everything, leave one behind, and I'll say Hashgacha Pratis, the one I left behind.
Guess what? You can't.
You can't do that.
You can't do that, because as you're eating one by one, you're saying called the portion.
We're talking about Davar Chashuv.
Yeah, but
that's our case here.
But you're not allowed to approach that pot.
Right, so I'm saying
you're limited.
But according to this argument, to this way of thinking, then I should be able to allow to approach the pot.
Right. So we have to. Right. So we need to understand. That's what we need to understand a little bit more. The svara.
Can it be? This is an idea.
Yeah.
Kol sheparish meruba parish. We say when we're dealing with consuming something that might be an isser. Here we're not dealing with the question of consuming something that might be an isser. Here we're dealing with something that assers the rest of the pot because of hashivas.
Right.
So there perhaps we don't need to say kol parish meruba parish. Maybe it doesn't apply with respect to that particular din of hashav.
Yeah, as we will see. Yeah, you will see.
So maybe what's so confusing about this, when you read it, first the natural response is, how can you say such a thing? Like you say, it's a real part. Maybe what's so confusing about it is that we don't strictly distinguish when does one concept apply, maybe by consuming isser, and when does that same concept not apply, when we're talking about answering everything else because of hashivas.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about now. Yes?
Kavua, that's an example of flesh.
No, the concept of kavua is already a choshev concept.
By itself.
By treating the situation as 50-50. In other words, that in itself is telling us that the Chacham said, even though we usually say roiv, we're not going to say that in those circumstances.
But when you say Chacham and say, nevertheless, we say that kavua
is a din d'oraisa, right? Yeah. Anyway, so the second din over here is very unique. It tells us that we make an assumption. The word assumption in the Gemara is toilin. Toilin, in other words, we assume, we say that the piece that fell into the water, the piece that was eaten, the shoigeg, was the asur piece. Now, what did we accomplish? We had a problem here that because we're dealing with a davar chashuv, which can be either a birya, balechayim, chaticha ru'el davar sheish lo matirim, there's no bittul at all, midrabana, right? It's very important to remember it's only midrabana. But because of this follow-up incident where something fell into the water, Chacham said, great, we have good news. Something that was not even bottled be'elef, right now is bottled.
It's gone. It fell
it's in the ocean. You're right. It's not even bottled. It's gone. And because it's gone, the rest is mutter. You're right. So technically, Ilan is right. There's not even a din bitul over here. We make that assumption that the isser is gone. And hutru kol achem shanu toilin loimar, I'm recording the words, ha'isur holach lo. Yeah. Okay, so he tells us how to eat the rest. Okay, we have instructions on how to eat the rest. I'm not going to get into that. So what's going on over here? We know that midin Torah, they're bottle. It's only a midrabanan that the dvarim chashuvim are not bottle. Midin Torah, they're bottle. So since midrabanan, they are they're considered davar chashuv, and because of that, the Chachamim said they should not be batal. The Chachamim have the authority to tell us that, listen, if something fell into the water, we can be toilet. We are the ones that told you it's not batal. We are the ones that are telling you right now that one that fell into the water is the one that's asur. In other words, so that whole incident of falling into the water or being eaten b'shoigeg takes away the chashivas of the davar asur. Once that the chashivas is gone, we revert, is the word revert? Or resort? Revert, yeah. We revert back to the original din of bitul beroiv, midin Torah.
That's interesting, because now the thing that's gone, legabe chashivas, has to be misbatel legabe iser. Because without eating it, it's still there.
Yeah, because you still have a suffix.
Right.
Yeah, but that incident of falling into the water accomplished something that I could not accomplish in any other way that I know so far. There will be another way. 2, 3 taruvas. We're going to learn that next. But right now, I've discovered that there is a possibility of something which is choshev to be misbadal. Now, we've learned before that davar aroilis, kabed, birya, they have their own unique ways of losing their status of birya and roilis kabed by becoming shredded and so forth. But that's they by themselves. Here we're talking about the whole taruvas, and the whole taruvas goes through a transformation in a sense that because of the loss of the chashivas here, we revert back to the din of Torah that there's bitul beroiv, or you can depend on a bitul beroiv in the event the Isser is still here. So you're right. On one hand, we say the Isser is gone, and we say, well, maybe the Isser is still here. But even if it is, it's bitul beroiv midin Torah. Yeah. What's interesting, the Pri Megadim here brings down the Rosh. The Rosh says there's such a thing as din toilin over here. The whole reason why it's mutter is feks feika. So he mentions the din of Sfex Feika Legabe this too. You have it? The reason it's mutter is Sfex Feika. Maybe that's the one that fell in. You want to tell me the heter fell in? Maybe the one I'm eating right now is okay. In other words, again, you are able to have Rosh says, you're able to have a Sfex Feika here too. Alright. The third din is the din of Dvorim Chashuvim.
Can I ask you a
Yeah.
question with respect to Rosh?
Yeah.
Did you see at all, does the Rosh comment if it's a davar chashuv?
He doesn't deal with that.
Ah.
Yeah. He just says there's a Sfex Feika. It's a typical Sfex Feika situation. And because of that, they allowed it. Now, we would still have the problem if the Isser was an Isser D'oraisa, perhaps, as saying, well, you already have an Isser. Can you have, like we had before, once you have something that's Usser, could you make a Sfex Feika out of it? That's what we will be talking about. That's a very, very interesting area of when do you have a Sfex Feika, when do you not have a Sfex Feika? Do you have to have them both happening at the same time, apparently? And the nature of the subject will make a big difference. Okay, we'll leave that for the next. But let's look at the third din. The third din is Dvarim Davar She'eino Batel Machmas Chashivus, which was Seif Ches, which got mixed in B'acher. V'nofam Metarufas Zot Echad L'Shnayim Acherim. V'nofam Me'ashloisha Echad L'Shnayim Acherim. So you have 3 taruvas. You have the original, you have an intermediary one, a second one, and then you have a third one. So here's another example of a davar chashuv, of something becoming, or being asur, and eventually becoming mutter through something that happened that made it mutter. What is that? 3 taruvas, or more. 3 taruvas does that according to Mechaber. 1 does not do it, 2 does not do it, 3 does it. So you can have a davar chashuv somehow, if it fell in many times, if you have that kind of a situation, it eventually becomes mutter. Cheri mutorim. Why? Because after all, you're able to achieve bitul beroiv at the third taruvas. But if the first one fell into even 1,000, they all would remain asur. At the third stage, we're allowing bitul beroiv not because it's bitul beroiv now more than before, only because at this point you have Sfex Feika. Why not? Why don't you have Sfex Feika at the second taruvas? Why do you have Sfex Feika only by the third taruvas? So we spoke a little bit about this before, that there's a machloikas. It's a big machloikas where you actually need 3 or you need 2 taruvas. Remember, we're dealing with a davar chashuv. Do we need 3 like the Mechaber says, or do we need 2? Ramah again goes back to saying what he said before: one person should not eat all of them. And we're talking about a Vada Isur because a Safek Isur Shenis Arav, with Nofar Moisu Taruvos the Mokam Acher, Taruvos Shnir Shor, everybody would agree with that. If it was a Safek Isur that became mixed, then fell into another pot. So here we have a Machlokes. So what is going on over here? How are you matir by the third? And if you're matir by the third, why shouldn't you be matir by the second Taruvos? What's the difference between the third and the second? Poshup Pshat, the Svara is, those who allow the second Taruvos hold, hey, by the second Taruvos you have a Sfek Sveika. And those that do not allow it, say, you don't have a Sfek Sveika by the first Taruvos because you have a real Isser. You have a real Isser. By the time you get to the second Taruvos, what do you have? What we're saying is it's not both, it's Asr. You don't have a real Sfek Sveika. Even though it's the Rabbanan, they hold it's Asr. So you only are able to achieve Sfek Sveika according to that Shita by the time you get to the third Taruvos, and not the second one. That's the Poshet difference in the Chiluk between those who hold you need two and those that you hold that you need three. Now, the Gra explains it a little bit better. It's very important to see how the Gra explains it, because he says that what's happening in the second Taruvos, according to the ones that hold that you need three, is that in the second Taruvos you actually lose the Chashivas. That happens in the second Taruvos, right? And all you're left is with one suffix, and once you're left with one suffix, you need a third Taruvos to be mevatel that suffix. But the second Taruvos achieves what we spoke about before, losing the chashivas that the davar chashav has. It's no longer there. Once it starts mixing up more and more and more, it loses. It cannot retain the chashivas, which the Chachamim said is never batal. But at some point, it loses that. And once it's lost that, all you need is one more Taruvos to remove the suffix. Another machlokes that exists over here is between the Rashba, I think, and the other Shitas. I forget who. Rashba and the Rambam, actually, the Rambam. Yeah. The Rashba and the Rambam. Whether when you have various Taruvos, do you need really Chad Betrei, or is it Chad Bechad enough? Because the Rashba holds that even if you had half of it fall into another pot, which is not, you don't really have roiv, but you already have a suffix, that already generates a suffix. If you have half falling into another pot. So the Rashba says that will be enough to create a suffix, whereas the Rambam says you actually need Chad Betrei, not Chad Bechad. At every stage of the three Taruvos, you need to have a majority. What's the machlokes between them? So I saw somebody explain very nicely. What is it that we really need to accomplish here? Do we need the din of bitul beroiv? In other words, and the more you have, the more bitulim you have, the more taruvos you have, the original isser is diminished through bitul beroiv, which is what the Rambam requires, or it's not a din of bitul beroiv. The Rashba would hold, all I need is ribui taruvos. I need an increase in the number of mixtures, and what that will accomplish is it will take away the chashivas. All I want is to take away the chashivas which caused the problem to begin with, and therefore I don't need to have chad betrei at every single stage. So once I have this many taruvos, all that I have accomplished is that I've removed the obstacle, the barrier, whatever you want to call it, that has caused the problem of lack of bitul. It's a davar chashuv. So, otherwise, why does he say 50% is enough? You don't have roiv. Obviously, the roiv is not the key over here. It's the various taruvas that you're going to have that are somehow going to cancel out the chashivas of the isser.
Yeah, I've been thinking.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Whether I have 4 pots or 3 pots.
Right.
And isser falls from one to the other. Each pot containing 4 pieces of isser falls in 3 pots.
Right.
Or if I had one big pot with 12 pieces of meat and the isser full pot.
Right.
What's the difference? Whether it falls several times or one time, ultimately.
It's statistics. It's numbers.
So I wanted to. The difference is if it fell into the pot with 12 pieces,
for
sure it's in that pot. But if it falls from one pot into the other, maybe I don't know which piece fell into the other pot, then I don't know whether the so that us everything in the pot ever entered into this pot, out of which one piece fell into that one.
That's correct. That's a good point.
So the difference
true.
is indeed not the question of majority.
Right.
The difference is that I come to a situation where I don't know whether that is, not whether that is one of the pieces I'm eating, but whether that is ever entered into that pot in order to usher anything on. If it did, it would usher everything.
Yeah,
but if it never entered into the pot, it can't usher anything.
That is the yesod of Sfek Sveika that is coming out of all this. And what you're saying is very, very true, because the other din of falling into the water, the only way that the poskim explained, the only way it's mutter is when the piece that fell into the water is no longer be'ein, as the Rashba explains. It's no longer around that we need to consider that piece.
Once it's in the water, or what?
Once it's in the water, once it's gone completely, because once it's gone completely, we can make safely an assumption that it could have been that. If it's not gone and if it's still around,
in the water,
no, whatever, anywhere. Tzorich lodun bo, as he says, that's his language. Tzorich lodun bo, I have to reconsider it. Maybe yes, maybe not. Like you're saying, maybe yes, maybe not. It's here or it's not, because you have 12 pieces in your example. It's here. Tzorich lodun bo, is it this or that? It's here for sure. But once it's completely gone, it's not be'ein, and we make that assumption, that means there's a good chance that it's completely gone. Lo tzorich lodun, I don't have to be done with that anymore. But once it's here, how can I escape? How can I ignore it? So that's a good chiluk, what you're saying. Yeah. Whether it's all in one, or versus 3 or 4, it may not be there altogether. Yeah, very good. All right, just quickly, there is a machlokes also, Rishonim, if you say Sfek Sveika by Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin. If you recall, Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin, there's various ways of learning why Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin is Asar. It's eventually going to be mutter. Like Rashi says, Parshat Shad, eventually going to be mutter, so just wait. Why have to deal with the bittul if it's going to be mutter anyway? But without getting into the svora of Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin so much, Sfek Sveika by Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin, would that help? Because here we're saying Sfek Sveika is powerful. But wait a minute, Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin means that it's going to be mutter anyway, so why should I allow Sfek Sveika? Follow me? It's going to be Davar Sheyesh. Why don't you just wait? It's going to be mutter soon, right? So there's a machlokes here, believe it or not, between Rabbeinu Tam and who's the other sheet? The Rosh, I think. Yeah, the Rosh. Rabbeinu Tam says it's mutter. The Rosh says it's also. Why should there be a machlokes here? What's the pshat? I mean, the Rosh I can understand very, very easily. He says it's a Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin. We don't say Sfek about Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin because it's going to be mutter anyway. Pashup pshat. Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin means in every situation it's going to be Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin. So what's the svara of Rabbeinu Tam that it should be mutter? So this leads us to the yesod of Sfek Sveika. There's a famous Hakira, I think, in Sfek Sveika. It's something that is well known. What is the chidush of Sfek Sveika? Is Sfek Sveika because of statistics of roiv? The more Sfeikas you have, the less the chances are that you're dealing with the Isser. Is it midin? Does it come midin bitul beroiv? Numerically, the more Sfeikas you have, the less the chances are that you have an Isser here? Or is it a unique, different kind of din altogether? That whenever you have a Sfek Sveika, we say the Isser is not there. It is so kolush, so insignificant, that we don't have to deal with it at all.
But that's only by the Suda or
anything.
That's Suda Rice also.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, we will see. Yeah. It's a machlokes. But that is a very important chiluk over here, because it could be, the Rosh simply looks at it as midin bitul. Okay? Midin bitul, yes, Sfek Sveika is powerful stuff, but it's a Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin. If it's a Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin, then I don't follow the halachas of bitul. Yes, Sfek Sveika says that there's eventually, the chances are that, statistically, that the issue is not here. So you have a din bitul, but it's a Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin. Forget the bitul. The Rabbeinu Tam may learn that the din of Sfek Sveika is a chidush, it's a unique din, midoraisa, in other words, the concept, that tells us whenever you have a suffix, it's like an isur vadai. The Torah says it's asur. Whenever you have a Sfek Sveika, there's no isur.
The halacha is misbatled, not
Exactly.
And the other position...
Yeah, exactly, yeah. There's no halacha, those... לא צריך להתייחס לזה. You don't even have to relate to this. The Isser is so minute possibility that the Torah says, there's no Isser. There's no Isser. Then why do I need davar sheyesh lo materin for? There's no Isser to begin with, because it's a spek sveika. See what I mean? Yeah. That could be. It could be the chiluk, because it depends how you learn what spek sveika really is. Otherwise, why is Rabbi Elyahu Kin saying it's mutter? I mean, davar sheyesh, just wait. No, maybe this spek sveika means that there's no Isser altogether. So,
the din of Isser doesn't apply.
Yes.
Now, with respect to the Rosh, would hold in this scenario that's of statistics.
Right.
If I were to consider a question of wouldn't the question arise, the more pieces of meat, the more sveikas I have. So meat would be a new sveika. If I have two meat and one that's asr, and two mutter, then it could be one of the three. So I have, let's say, I call that a suffix.
Right.
If I have 6 pieces, I have one suffix with respect to the first 3. If I'm talking it's a question of statistics, then I have a second suffix with respect to the second 3. So I have a sveika. If it's a question of statistics, I mean, doesn't that question arise? If it were a question of statistics, the more I have in the pot, the more sveikas I have.
Yeah, well,
it's not the way we say it, but
no. Well, listen. I mean, that's the ikar yesod of din bitul beroiv. That yes, when you do have a majority, then it's bottle because of that.
But I don't call it a sveika.
No. It's not. That in itself is not a sveika. You don't even need it. Right. It's two different concepts. Yeah. It's just that the sveika means that I have an additional suffix, which we're going to be talking about, by the way. What does it really mean? How it really works? We haven't gotten to that yet. Is it making the first suffix less? Is it introducing a brand new suffix, and the combination of the two is telling us that there's nothing to worry about? In other words, what exactly happens? When you have a sveika. And that's a very important question, because that's what we're going to be talking about next, all the different scenarios of what constitutes a sveika, which we're going to be learning now in Sif Tes, an example of. But before we get to Sif Tes, just another point or two. Based on what the Shach brings down, the Mechaber will be Mate Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin Sveika, because he would follow the Rashba. Rashba brings down that would be Mutter. The Ramon would be Machmir, unless there's a big tzorech. What's interesting about sveika that is shayach today, that is relevant in Los Angeles and in anywhere in Chutz La'aretz, is can you eat bread from a bakery if there's a suffix, it's chodosh or yoshon? The heter for us to eat, at least some of the time, I say some of the time because I'll explain why. The heter for us to eat bread from a bakery, in Chutz La'aretz that is, in Ezra we're more machmir, it could be chodosh. Chodosh, we paskin is also in Chutz La'aretz too.
Is that the Rabbanan or
but it makes no difference. I mean, at least with Rabbanan, right? So, I mean, there's various opinions about that. But according to the stricter ruling that we are machmir in Chutz La'aretz, we're not machmir mi'ikar din according to the Ramah by a suffix. Why? Because you have a sveika. When you're buying a piece of bread, what's the sveika? Safek, if it's chodosh wheat or yoshan wheat. All of you are familiar with what chodosh and yoshan is, right? Before the omer, after the omer. And even if you say it's from the new wheat, there's a possibility that it took root before Pesach. And if it took root before Pesach, even though it's could be chodosh, it's okay.
Only we don't know that.
Right, Sam? So, even if it is, maybe it took root before. So you have a suffix sveika, and the Shach explains there by the Chodosh, that even though there are some who will say, wait a minute, davar sheyesh lo matirin by sveika, why don't you just wait? Remember that? We just said that?
Right.
Davar sheyesh lo matirin. When are we machmir by davar sheyesh lo matirin by sveika by taaruvos? In a mixture. But in the case of the Ramah, by Chodosh and Yoshan, we're not going to be machmir. We're going to say we're going to be mekel. By that, we're going to treat that as a real sveika and not call it a davar sheyesh lo matirin that we have to be machmir.
So by the case of sveika here, if I'm understanding you correctly, I'm wondering whether I have. If I'm understanding you correctly, then if I'm going to put the sveika in my mouth, I can go ahead and do chadash v'yan.
Right.
If I'm going to put the sveika in a pot with other things, then I can't eat anything in the pot.
No, not exactly. In the case of Taaruvot, where the situation is a davar sheish lo matirin, we will not rely on the sfex feika because it's davar sheish lo matirin. Right. Right. No. Yeah, but in the case of this bread?
If I take the bread and I put it in my mouth, I can't eat it. If I put it into a pot with other bread,
No, because before you put it into the pot, that bread already had a sfex feika.
Right. Of course.
Yeah, but you're now talking about the case of taruvas in the pot where the sfex feika is introduced in the pot. It becomes a sfex feika because of taruvas now.
So in this case, I could eat it neither. I could eat the bread alone, and I could also eat it if it got mixed with other bread.
Yes, you would be able to. Sure. Because the sfex feika already existed.
So the taruvas does not constitute the two suffix.
Right, exactly. The sfex feika is already there to begin with. About chodosh yoshan, this bread. Yeah. So that's how the Shach explains why over there, even though it may be a lechora davar sheish lo matirin too. Yeah. I've met people that eat matzahs in the time of the year where there is a suffix, and when they're here and they come from Israel here, they eat matzahs because matzahs for sure is not going to be chodosh.
But Rabbi Leper, no.
Yeah.
But Rabbi Leper actually, Rabbi Leper.
Yeah, sure.
He made a chakira, and his result was that I think it was something. But with everything else, he was able to the way the whole economy works here.
Right.
There is not a chance that you'll have a case of the way the cycle is from the time it is harvested until it actually becomes.
Really?
That's what he said. He gave us a whole chabura on that.
Yeah.
When he first came to Los Angeles, he did a on that. Until in the United States.
To me, it made sense like that. I'll tell you, it made sense that
until
it would not.
Flour, it already has to have had.
Exactly. To me, it made sense, logic sense, that you will not encounter this problem too often. The only reason that this ever arose as a problem is because this country does have two crops or two yields. Because of that, and there was always a chance that there can be chodesh. Now that in itself was not enough because you still have the sfex feika. What really made things more chamor, and that is why you have all these bakeries claiming that they have only yashan, is because today you could be mevarer by looking at the bag of flour, but looking at the date when it's from. And since you can be mevarer, go ahead and be mevarer.
Right, it doesn't help yourself anymore.
It doesn't help the suffix anymore. Yeah, but that's not so much too, because we do find, depending on how easy it is. If it's a little bit difficult, we do find that the chachamim were makel b'sfex seika not to be matriach people. And I think we're going to see that next. That there are situations. There is an example here that the chachamim were not matriach. If there is some hardship, there's some hardship. You have sfex feika. That's based on how we explain Rabbeinu Tam. It means there's no isser altogether. So it's midrabanan. There are various heterim of why we don't have to be machmer. But I tell people, listen, if you have the yashan, buy the yashan. Obviously, if it's not too difficult, buy yashan. But can you rely on the Ramah? All of us have done so for ages throughout Chutz La'aretz.
But it's yashan anyway.
Lately, with some of them.
Yes, the last years.
Right.
Is it something that one has to doubt? Do we have to be choishes?
No, we don't have to be.
Because Rabbi Busa, when he used to come here, always at that time, or we clarified that we'll use.
Yeah. Anyway, so we covered the three unique dinim, and now we're into Sif Tes. In Sif Tes, Sofek Treifa shenis'arev b'achiras kulun asura. So you have a Sofek Treifa. Now you don't have a real Isser that is being nis'arev. You have a Sofek Isser. It's a Sofek Treifa. Sofek Treifa shenis'arev b'achiras kulun asuras. They're all Asur. Ad sheyeh beheter kedei lebatel ha'Isser. Until you have enough, of course, of the heter to be mevatel the Isser. Shekivan shesofek harishon hayu begufoy ein la'atilu misfex feika. Don't say, oh, wait a minute. I have a sfex feika. What's a sfex feika? I have a suffix isser. It's not a real isser. It's only a suffix isser. And this suffix isser fell into Taaruvot. Oh, great! Now I have a sfex feika. No, this does not count as a sfex feika. So now the Mechabes Halacha here and the Ramah are introducing us to a very important example of when you cannot say sfex feika. The Mechaber's interpretation, the Mechaber's reasoning of why this is not a sfex feika, even though it appears to be that you have to. Safek if this is treif or not. And even if you say it's treif, it's in a taruvas. Right? No, you have, and of course, if you have enough in the Taaruvot to mevatala, then you're safe. We're talking about what you do not have. Obviously. But why do we want to be matur? Because it's Sfek Safek, it's Asr Mutter. And even if you say it's the Asr, maybe this piece is the Mutter one. Remember, I don't have Roiv. The Chabad says, no, you can't do that. You have to have Roiv. You cannot make a Sfek in this situation. Why? His reasoning is, Shesafek Arishon Ahoyo Begufoi. Ein Latum Sfek. So we're going to be learning about Sfek. So this is one of those rules. If one Safek is in the Guf Hadovar, and the second Safek has nothing to do with it, it's a totally separate question. That's not called a Sfek. It has to be part of the same thing. In other words, the two Sfekes, ideally, should be concerning, is this mutter or asr? Here we're saying, one Safek is in the piece of meat. It may be kosher, maybe treif. Another Safek is it this or not? You see how the two are not related? The two have to be related to the same thing, to the same isser. Is this mutter or asr? And even if you say it's asr, it could still be mutter for another reason. See what I mean? On the same thing. Here we're not. So the Mechaber says that the suffix in the guf is a totally separate suffix than the second suffix. So you don't have a sfek. The Ramah says, "V'yesh omrim matam da also hoil v'suffix hu isur doraisa." Since the first suffix that we have is an isur doraisa, lanucha loimra oil suffix. Oh, sounds familiar. Once you have an isur doraisa, suffix isur doraisa, you can't say anything more about a second suffix because it's already asr. Remember we said that before. The Ramah mentioned that before. Once you have a suffix doraisa, it's asr. It's not even a suffix. It's asr. Suffix doraisa lechumra. So since the isur doraisa v'lanucha loimra, you cannot say another suffix. She'en kan isur rak shenisar b'chein. Or you don't have. She'en kain isur rak shenis arev b'acherin, that it's mixed in others. Lo mikras sfeika. Ve'osor, aval im hoyu beis sfeikas, if you have really two sfeikas, im hoyu kan isur klal altogether, ve'noy du beis sfeikas b'yachad. He's adding, and the two sfeikas were known at the same time. Matin sfeika b'chol makom, afilu be'isur doraisa, be'gufa shel isur, the real isur. So that's okay, he says, as long as they happen at the same time, as long as they're about the same thing. Afilu hoyu lo cheskas isur, even if the piece of meat has a chazakas of an isur. What's a chazaka? It starts off as an isur. Kigon oif. A chicken, shebecheskas isur oimet. It's always becheskas isur until you know for sure everything is okay. And what happened to this chicken? Nishbar or nishmat gapoi. One of the wings broke or fell off. Safek michayim. Our whole dilemma and whole question is: did this wing fall off b'chayim or la'achar shchita? You slaughtered the chicken, and the guy is doing mass wholesale, right? And he takes the chicken and throws it on the pile. That's okay to throw it. I mean, you killed it. You can throw it now. You don't want to throw it while it's alive. You're going to break it up. Right? You're going to make it a treif. So here we're looking at the chicken. We see black and blue marks. Oh, wow. The wing is broken. Wait a minute. Did the wing break before or after? What difference does it make the wing? Because if the wing breaks, it could perforate the lungs. If it perforates the lung, it's treif. But what if it broke afterwards? It could have broken afterwards. We don't know. So nishbar nishmat safek mechayim or la'achar shchita ve'im timtzu lo'ima mechayim. If you say it was while it was alive, wait a minute. Who's to say for sure? Shema lo nikva reya. Maybe the reya, the lungs are not perforated.
Check.
Oh, wait a minute. You can check. But yesh le'atim mikoch sfek sfeikla. Afal pi sheyesh levar le'ibdikas areya. Even though you can check it. Ein lochush. You don't have to worry about it. That's the one. That's the example I gave you. You can check it. You have a sfek. Yeah, you have a sfek in that case. You could be matter the chicken, and you don't even have to check it. Because even though you can check it, because the chachamim were not matriach. That was the example I told you before. There are cases the chachamim were not matriach you.
Because it's you have to go to trouble.
Yeah, because even though I haven't really looked recently into that example. I learned it when I learned treifas, about about this possibility it does exist, and how often it is, and could you know for sure that this became perforated from this or not? What are the chances? So maybe if we have a chance, we'll look into it a little bit more next time we meet. But this is an example of sfek that would be allowed. Yeah. What's interesting, I made a note for myself over here, that in the Pri Megadim, says that according to the one of the opinions in Tosfos who holds that sfek does not work if one is beguf and the other one is in Taaruvot, that's only midirabanan. But midaraisa, that would be a sfek.
So now it's midirabanan.
In other words, the reason why, the sfek would not be allowed is only midirabanan. Midirabanan, it would be considered a sfek, because in the end,
so you
have a roiv.
Already removed. What remains is the Rabbanan because they don't allow this. The
sfek would not work when one is in the guf and one in the was.
Right.
In Ikar Adin, it would be fine because you have roiv. In the end, somehow, one way or another, you end up having roiv, and that's sufficient. But the midrabanan sfek would not qualify for sfek if one is in the guf meaning is this treif or kosher, and the second suffix is in the taruvos. It's not part of the same thing, and there are conditions of what determines what qualifies as a sfek or not. So that's B'ezrat Hashem what we'll be talking about in the next year or so. 36 conditions or 36 ways of how sfek works. Yeah, but otherwise, just to finish up, what is the nafkamina between the Mechaber and the Ramah? Mechaber seems to be saying that this is not a real sfek. We're talking about a piece of meat that is a suffix tray for now. It fell into Taaruvot. It's one is in the guf and one is in the Taaruvot. And the Ramah says no. You start off with a suffix deraisa. Once you start off with a suffix deraisa, it's also so there's no sfek anymore. All you have is one suffix. It's not it's also. The simple nafkamina between the two explanations of why it's not a sfek is if the isur is derabanan. According to Ramah, it would be mutter. He is only concerned about a suffix deraisa here. Once it's a suffix deraisa, there's no more sfek. But according to the Mechaber, if the two sfekas are not related, one is in the guf and one is in the Taaruvot, I don't care if it's an isur derabanan or if it's an isur deraisa. The sfek doesn't work. But if the Ramah says the problem here is not guf, don't tell me about this guf and Taaruvot. The problem is that you're starting off with a suffix deraisa. You cannot say anything anymore about another suffix. It's already aser. The suffix deraisa lechumah. Right? That's why it's important also to know if the two happen at the same time or not. An important condition for sfek is that they occur at the same time.
By the rice,
we'll see. Yeah, because by the Rabbanan it's going to be a suffix Rabbanan anyway.
Right.
Yeah. So that's another important condition, which Mr. Hashem will cover when we get into it. Yeah.
If the suffix to Rabbanan is low,
yeah.
Why do we need to say the suffix?
Huh?
If the suffix to Rabbanan is low, we can say that on the first suffix.
Right.
Why do we need suffix?
You don't need one.
So sfek is only
right. Exactly. In other words, it may not. It's just that when you have a sfek, it becomes stronger, more of a reason. Because remember, by davar sheish lo matirim, all of those situations is also the Rabbanan. Right? And what do we say by them? That we allowed sfek in one of those situations. At least the Mechaber was mater, even though actually that was not a good example, because that was a din of kavua, that he used sfek. But in Sif Ches, when you have 3 Taaruvos, at some point you do have a sfek. The only question is at the stage 2 or stage 3 Taaruvos. You're coming to a point where you have sfek, and that sfek is basically weakening the chashivas, which is entirely midrabanan. You always have a roiv midaraisa anyway. So the sfek is helping us with a derabanan, to allow a derabanan, but a strict derabanan. It's not batal afilu be'elef. So that's why you could use a sfek even in a derabanan. So
because suffix
just a plain suffix derabanan, the kula, right?
Why is suffix derabanan not fit?
Because that's what they said. That's the whole chumrah of the davar sheish lo matirin or the biria. Obviously, it's a suffix, right? But that kind of a suffix they didn't.
Before it came into the Torah.
What?
Before it came into the Torah.
Before it came into the Torah.
Before it came into the Torah, why don't I say suffix to the Rabbanan?
No, what you're talking about is something else. Maybe you're talking about if there's a situation if the isur is at the Rabbanan and it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin, or it's one of those things that is not bought up. Yeah, that is another machlokes. If you say that, since it's only an isur derabanan, and the whole Indian of lam batul be'elav is also derabanan, do you apply it by those? Remember we discussed that before. If you say a davar sheyesh lo matirim, or do you say a davar chashuv by an isur derabanan? Because the whole thing that it's not batul be'elav is derabanan in itself. So obviously you can be mekel. Yeah. So anyway, so this is an important point, and there's a machlokes, in other words, do we require the sfeikus to occur at the same time or not? And Mr. Hashem will get into it a little bit more on Thursday.